respect the desire of the overwhelming majority of Africans who condemn the flagrant violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the DRC. No country, no people would want their territory and their sovereignty to be violated in full view of absolutely everyone. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank Burundi for the statement. I now give the floor to South Africa.
Thank you, Mr. President. We wish to once again congratulate the People's Republic of China on assuming the presidency of the Council for the month of February. We thank Special Representative Bintu Keita and Special Envoy Huang Xia for their important briefings. And we acknowledge the presence of Minister of Foreign Affairs of the DRC, Her Excellency Ms. Teresa Kaikwamba Wagner. South Africa wishes to thank the United Nations and its member states for sharing our grief as we mourn the death of our peacekeepers in the Eastern DRC. We express gratitude to all that played a role in the successful repatriation of the remains of our fallen troops. Mr. President, since the emergency meetings of the Security Council on 26 and 28 January 2025, the situation in the Eastern DRC has deteriorated. Despite repeated calls for a ceasefire and restraint, the M23 and its allies continue to capture territories in the eastern region of the DRC. The capital of North Kivu, Goma, as well as other cities such as Bukavu, are now under the full control of the M23. The supply of electricity, water, humanitarian aid and communication networks have been disrupted, putting the lives of many injured and the displaced communities at high risk. Mr. President, the recent African Union Summit reiterated the need for all of the parties to the conflict to engage in negotiations towards a sustainable political solution. This decision reinforces the outcomes of the seminal joint summit of the East African Community, the EAC, and the South African Development Community, SADC. We believe that the measure of the Luanda and Nairobi processes, as decided by the joint summit, is prudent for a harmonized and coherent approach to dealing with the prevailing situation in Eastern DRC. Both processes must prioritize, as a matter of urgency, addressing the proliferation and activities of armed groups. All illegal armed groups and uninvited armed forces from neighboring countries are an obstacle to peace and stability in the entire region. All key actors must demonstrate political will to put an end to the crisis. For this reason, South Africa strongly urges all parties to the conflict to engage in de-escalation efforts, confidence-building measures, and fulfill the already agreed terms of the Luanda process. This includes an immediate ceasefire, the implementation of the harmonization plan for the neutralization of the FDLR, the disengagement of foreign forces in the territory of the DRC, and for all parties to participate fully in the ad hoc verification mission monitoring the ceasefire. Alongside the ongoing political process, all parties must ensure that humanitarian efforts are unimpeded and essential services are restored in Goma and other affected areas. Should the parties fail to reach any meaningful progress, despite myriad efforts and decisions aimed at bringing about peace and stability, the Security Council must assume its role by taking measures within its mandate to prevent further carnage in the Eastern DRC. The situation in the Eastern DRC requires a set of immediate measures to mitigate further death and suffering, and to end the capture and control of territory by the M23 and its allies. In this context, we look forward to this Council adopting the draft resolution before it, and hope that it will help with the immediate cessation of hostilities and aid the political process. In conclusion, Mr. President, for the African continent to prosper, we need to truly silence the guns and harness our collective efforts towards development-focused solutions to prolonged challenges. Together, let us make a paradigm shift from the battlegrounds of war to the corridors of diplomacy, and seek solutions through compromise above the rigid ideologies of war that often seek absolute victories. History has taught us that absolute victories in war are hollow and simply allow for the continuation of conflict in different forms, often for decades to come. The parties to the conflict must choose peace and negotiate in good faith, with lasting peace as the ultimate prize for the sake of the future of the DRC, the Great Lakes region, and Africa as a whole. I thank you.
I thank South Africa for the statement. I now give the floor to Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Mr. President. Zimbabwe appreciates the briefings provided today and welcomes the presence of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation and La Francophonie of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Her Excellency Therese Kaikwamba Wagner. The security situation in the Eastern DRC remains a matter of grave concern. That is why our region has devoted significant time and resources to addressing this crisis, recognizing its far-reaching implications for peace, stability, and development, not only in the DRC, but across the broader Great Lakes region. Indeed, some of our SADC citizens have made the ultimate sacrifice in pursuit of peace in the DRC. Recent high-level engagements underscore the urgency of the situation. The SADC Extraordinary Summit on 31 January 2025, followed by the joint SADC-EAC Summit on 8 February 2025, and the African Union Peace and Security Council Summit on 14 February 2025, all reaffirm the importance of African-led solutions. These efforts reflect the principle of subsidiarity. Mr. President, the principal responsibility for maintaining international peace and security rests with the United Nations Security Council. We therefore urge the Council to align its actions with the decisions and recommendations of African-led initiatives. Strengthening these regional mechanisms will ensure a more coordinated, effective, and contextually relevant response. Zimbabwe calls for support to ongoing regional efforts, particularly within the frameworks of the Luanda and Nairobi processes. These initiatives are essential in addressing the escalating insecurity fueled by the insurgencies of M23 and other armed groups. In that regard, Zimbabwe welcomes the ongoing negotiations on the Security Council draft resolution. We hope that its adoption will complement regional efforts to achieve a peaceful solution to the conflict, and we hope that this will happen without any further delay. My delegation wishes to highlight 5 further priorities essential for restoring peace and stability in the DRC. 1, immediate cessation of hostilities and an unconditional ceasefire. Without an immediate and sustained ceasefire, the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the DRC will remain under threat with dire consequences for regional security. 2, withdrawal of M23 and its allies from captured territories, including Goma and Bukavu. 3, withdrawal of all foreign forces present in the DRC without invitation, including from neighboring countries. 4, protection of civilians and facilitation of humanitarian assistance. The ongoing conflict has inflicted untold suffering, leading to widespread displacement and humanitarian distress. It is imperative that humanitarian assistance reaches those most in need, while humanitarian actors are guaranteed a safe and secure environment to undertake their work. 5, ending the illicit exploitation and trafficking of natural resources. Addressing this root cause of conflict is critical to breaking the cycle of violence and fostering sustainable development in the DRC. Further, Zimbabwe strongly condemns attacks against UN peacekeepers and regional troops, which constitute violations of international law and may amount to war crimes. We denounce assault on SAMI DRC forces whose deployment was endorsed by the African Union Peace and Security Council in March 2024. Ensuring their safety is paramount. Mr. President, the Security Council must recognize that African-led peace processes offer the most viable path to a lasting solution in the DRC. Supporting the full implementation and harmonization of the Luanda-Nairobi processes is key to restoring stability. We therefore urge the Council to reinforce these mechanisms and ensure that its interventions align and support these efforts. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank Zimbabwe for the statement. I now give the floor to Malawi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Allow me first to congratulate China for assuming the chairmanship of the Security Council for the month. I'd like to thank the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Affairs, Cooperation and the Francophone of DRC, Excellencies, distinguished members of the Council. The Republic of Malawi, as a committed member of the African Union and the Southern African Development Community, SADC, is joining shared concerns as advocated by the International Conference on the Great Lakes region, the Eastern African Community, the Economic Community of the Central African States, and other regional and international bodies, and is deeply concerned with the deteriorating security and humanitarian situation in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The ongoing offensive in both North Kivu and South Kivu, particularly involving the M23 supported by Rwanda, which has resulted in significant civilian suffering and regional instability. The Republic of Malawi stands in solidarity with the regional and international bodies and supports all efforts aimed at restoring peace, security, and stability in the region. The Republic of Malawi recognizes the complex and multifaceted nature of the conflict in the Eastern DRC and wish to emphasize the importance of a collaborative and inclusive approach to resolving the crisis. We commend the efforts of the African Union, the Eastern African Community, the Economic Community of the Central African States, the ICGLR, and SADC in addressing the situation and working towards sustainable peace. The Republic of Malawi fully supports the resolution aimed at restoring peace in Eastern DRC and echoes the call for all parties to engage in dialogue, cease hostilities, and prioritize the protection of civilians because one death is a life too many to lose. As a party to various regional and international peace instruments, the Republic of Malawi reaffirms its commitment to supporting initiatives that promote peace, security, and development in the Great Lakes region. We urge all stakeholders to work together in a spirit of cooperation and mutual respect to address the root causes of the conflict and ensure a peaceful environment for all. Malawi stands ready to contribute to these efforts and to support all parties' strong desire to pursue long-lasting peace in DRC. This is why Malawi has never hesitated to assist in such situations as a moral obligation. The Republic of Malawi is very concerned about reports of serious violations of international humanitarian law and human rights abuses by armed groups in DRC, including claims of high levels of sexual and gender-based violence. The Republic of Malawi is equally concerned with a growing number of forcibly displaced persons in eastern DRC because of the deteriorating security and humanitarian situation, and reiterates the need for all parties to pursue dialogue and to amicably resolve the crisis in DRC. On the same tone, the Republic of Malawi deplores any attacks on peacekeepers and humanitarian agents aimed at contributing to peace-building processes in DRC. As a committed member of the AU and SADC and advocate of the principles of other regional and international bodies, the Republic of Malawi calls for an immediate end of such attacks and urges all stakeholders to ensure the safety and security of peacekeepers and humanitarian personnel. Finally, Mr. President, allow me to thank the United Nations, member states, and all those partners who supported Malawi to repatriate the remains of our fallen troops back to Malawi, and those continuing to support peacekeeping operations missions. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Malawi for the statement. Her Excellency Ms. Therese Kaikamba Wagner, State Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation and Francophonie of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, has asked the floor to make a further statement. I give her the floor.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, members of the Council, for months we have been listening to Rwanda try to justify what is unjustifiable, to justify its repeated aggression, its war of occupation, and the pillaging of our resources. Today, again, we have heard the Rwandan representative try to legitimize not only Rwanda's attacks against the Democratic Republic of the Congo and its people, but also its attacks on the very legal architecture of this organization. We listened to Rwanda try to legitimize its war following the displacement of millions of civilians, following the pillaging of our resources in the hundreds of tons, and even after the killing of dozens of blue helmets and African peacekeepers. I remind this Council that yesterday the High Commissioner for Human Rights documented summary executions of children by the RDF M23 coalition in Bukavu. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the Council, trying to justify the execution of children is so ignoble and abject, and I simply cannot even find a response to it today. The Permanent Representative of Rwanda, you have already lost the battle of truth. Thank you.
I thank Her Excellency Ms. Kaikamba Wagner for her statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.
on which this building